Hello, this is Jim Michaely, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the December 16th, 2025 issue of the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Starting on the front page, this is an article titled, "What We Know About the Deadly Shooting at Brown University." The authorities are still searching for the gunman who killed two people on the Rhode Island campus. A gunman burst into the classroom at Brown University in Rhode Island on Saturday, killing two people and wounding 9 others before fleeing the campus. The search for the attacker dragged into Tuesday after the authorities said they had released a person of interest who had been detained earlier. The Ivy League University lifted a lockdown of its campus in Providence early Sunday, but said it had canceled all remaining classes and exams for the rest of the fall semester. Here's what to know about the attack. What happened? The shooting was reported at about 4 p.m. on Saturday in a room in the Barris and Holly building, where students were attending a final exam review session for an economics class. Other students inside the building were taking final exams or seeking quiet spots to study. An alert sent by the university told students and faculty members to lock their doors, silence their phones, and stay hidden because of reports of an active shooter. Many students hid in dorms, while others took shelter in the basement of a popular tea shop. Owen Fick, a junior, described seeing heavily armed police officers in protective gear running down the street before he rushed to a dorm room to shelter. "There were a lot of ambulances, a lot of cop cars, fire trucks," he said. "They just had a lot of gurneys." Students spent the night locked in classrooms, libraries, and dorms. Annalise Magis, a first-year pre-med student, was studying for her chemistry final in the science library when the shootings began. She and dozens of other students protected themselves by lowering shades and barricading doors, using whiteboards and chairs. Ms. Magis estimated that 2 or 3 hours passed before police officers broke down the barricades and the group was moved into the building's basement for another 4 to 5 hours. Who are the victims? The 2 students killed in the shootings were identified as Mukamdas Aziz Umarzakov and Ella Cook. Mr. Umarzakov, 18, from Midlothian, Virginia, was a naturalized American citizen who arrived in 2011 from Uzbekistan. His sisters, Ruxora and Samara, said that he chose Brown because of its financial aid offer and that he had worked at a Wawa over the summer to earn money for a computer. He had initially come to the country to receive treatment for a medical condition, Chiari malformation, in which spinal fluid puts pressure on the brain and spinal cord, according to his sisters and his friend Maddox Johnson. Mr. Umarzakov was interested in becoming a neurosurgeon to help children the way doctors had once helped him, Mr. Johnson said. Ms. Cook, 19, a sophomore from Mountain Brook, Alabama, was an accomplished piano player who was fluent in French and was vice president of the College Republican Club. A high school classmate, Katherine Johnson, described Ms. Cook as so smart, so studious, and focused. She had summer jobs at an ice cream parlor and as an assistant at an organization that runs summer study programs around the world. Who is the gunman? The authorities were still searching on Tuesday for the person who attacked the campus. Law enforcement officials have not named any suspects or mentioned potential motives. They said on Sunday that they had released a 24-year-old Wisconsin man whom they had detained earlier in the day. He has been cleared, Rhode Island's Attorney General Peter F. Naranja said on Monday, adding that the investigation is now focused in another direction. Law enforcement officials have released videos of the suspect walking along the street in dark clothing and have asked the public for help in identifying the person. One of the videos shows a person exiting the engineering building where the attack took place on Saturday. Taken from a closed-circuit television camera, the clip showed only the back of a man whom investigators believe could be the assailant. Mayor Brett Smiley of Providence said officials had no way of knowing if the attacker was still in the city, and Mr. Naranja indicated that there may not be video footage of the shooter inside the engineering building. There just weren't a lot of cameras in that Brown building, he said. How have officials responded? Officials have tried to reassure the public that they are working tirelessly to find the attacker while mourning the victims of the shooting. The fact that people are scared is perfectly understandable, and I imagine there'll be some element of that until we have this person in custody, Mr. Naranjo told NPR on Tuesday morning. And we are literally working around the clock. Governor Dan McKee of Rhode Island described the shooting as, quote, an unthinkable nightmare. This is something that's going to impact families and people's lives for a lifetime, he said. Mr. Smiley, the mayor of Providence, described meeting a wounded student at a hospital who had relied on training from an active shooter drill in high school. We shouldn't have to do active shooter drills, but it helped, the mayor said. And the reason it helped, and the reason we do these drills, is because it's so damn frequent. Rob Reiner and wife found stabbed to death. What we know. The director's family said that he and his wife, Michelle, died on Sunday. Their son, Nick Reiner, was arrested on suspicion of murder, police said. Rob Reiner, the award-winning Hollywood actor and director, and his wife, the producer and photographer, Michelle Singer Reiner, were found stabbed to death in their home in Los Angeles on Sunday, according to the police and others briefed on the case. Their son, Nick Reiner, 32, was arrested on suspicion of murder on Sunday night and was being held in a jail in Los Angeles County with no bail, the police said. Police officials said the case would be presented on Tuesday to the Los Angeles County District Attorney as the office considers charges. No additional information about criminal charges was immediately available. Here's what we know about Rob Reiner's death and his career. The police responded after deaths were reported at Mr. Reiner's house. Jim McDonnell, the chief of police for the Los Angeles Police Department, said that officers responded to reports of deaths at Mr. Reiner's residence in the Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles at around 3:40 p.m. on Sunday. Officers discovered 2 bodies inside, who were soon identified as Rob and Michelle Reiner. A very, very tragic incident, Chief McDonnell said at a news conference on Monday. Nick Reiner had struggled with drug abuse and homelessness. Nick Reiner had talked over the years about his struggles with drug abuse and bouts of homelessness. Partly because of that history, the police focused almost immediately on him, according to a person who was briefed by the authorities and spoke on condition of anonymity because they did not have the authority to speak publicly about the investigation. Photographs briefly posted online by the police department's Gang and Narcotics Division appeared to show Nick Reiner being detained near Exposition Park in Los Angeles. His lawyer, Alan Jackson, said on Tuesday his client had not been medically cleared to be transferred from the jail to the Superior Court of Los Angeles County. He did not give additional details about Mr. Reiner's planned defense. In his teens and 20s, Nick Reiner had been in and out of rehab. He worked with his father on a movie, Being Charlie, that was loosely inspired by his early life. When the film was released in 2015, he said he had been back home in Los Angeles and was staying clean. The night before the Reiners were killed, Rob and Nick Reiner attended a holiday party at the home of the comedian Conan O'Brien, according to 3 attendees who asked not to be named to maintain relationships. Rob and Nick Reiner got into a shouting match at the party, said one of the attendees, who recalled Rob Reiner telling his son that his behavior was inappropriate. The attendee, who did not speak to any of the Reiners at the party, said it was unclear what the argument was about, but Nick Reiner's past struggles were commonly known. Many of Rob Reiner's movies became classics. Mr. Reiner was born in the Bronx to a successful show business family. His father, Carl Reiner, created the Dick Van Dyke Show in the 1960s, and his mother, Estelle Reiner, was an actress and a singer. The younger Mr. Reiner enrolled in drama class in high school and landed roles in small theaters. He later created his own improv group. He first rose to fame in the 1970s when he played Meathead, Archie Bunker's son-in-law on the sitcom All in the Family. He won 2 Emmy Awards for his work on the show. Mr. Reiner made his directorial debut with the 1984 film This Is Spinal Tap, a mockumentary about a British band past its prime that became a cult classic. He directed The Princess Bride, 1987, and the 1989 hit When Harry Met Sally. One day, Michelle, a photographer, visited the New York set of When Harry Met Sally and was watching a scene when Mr. Reiner spotted her. A few months later, they married. He was a Democrat and a longtime political activist. Mr. Reiner, a Democrat, was an outspoken supporter of political causes. In 1998, he spearheaded a ballot initiative in California to raise taxes on tobacco to pay for early childhood programs. In 2005, he joined forces with labor unions to challenge some of the policies of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Republican. In 2006, voters rejected an initiative he led that would have raised income taxes on top earners to pay for half-day preschool for all 4-year-olds in California. Later, he backed a legal campaign to persuade the Supreme Court to establish same-sex marriage as a constitutional right. The stature of Mr. Reiner and his wife, among the biggest names in the Democratic Party, was evident in the tributes released after their death. Together, he and his wife lived lives defined by purpose, former President Barack Obama said on social media. They will be remembered for the values they championed and the countless people they inspired. From the obituary section, here's a notice for Peter Green, Pulp Fiction and The Mask actor, dies at 60. Mr. Green, who built a 4-decade career uncannily portraying villains, was found dead in his apartment in Manhattan on Friday, his manager said. Peter Green, a character actor who built a career through haunting portrayals of merciless villains, including in Pulp Fiction, The Mask, and dozens of other films and television shows, has died in New York. He was 60. Mr. Green's death was confirmed on Saturday by his manager, Greg Edwards, who said the actor had been found dead in his apartment in the Lower East Side neighborhood of Manhattan on Friday. A neighbor had complained about music playing for 24 hours, and a wellness check had been performed. Mr. Edwards did not provide a cause of death. Over a 4-decade career, Mr. Green stood comfortably in a villain's shoes, bringing to life a range of characters who unnerved audiences with their sadism and moral corruption. In Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, 1994, Mr. Green portrayed Zed, a security guard who sexually assaults the crime boss, Marcellus Wallace, played by Ving Rhames. Later that year, he starred as the mobster Dorian, opposite Jim Carrey, in the comedy The Mask. In 2001, he played a corrupt cop along Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke in Training Day, agreeing to help cover up the murder of a retired narcotics officer. His look and his ability to play the bad guy was unmatched, Mr. Edwards said, adding, "He was one of the greatest character actors on the planet." Mr. Green often improvised on set, Mr. Edwards said, either charming directors or frustrating them. He liked to, quote, bring his own thoughts and feelings to the character, as Mr. Edwards put it. In 1995, when Mr. Green portrayed the fence Redfoot in The Usual Suspects, he improvised a scene in which his character flicks a lit cigarette into the eye of Michael McManus, played by Stephen Baldwin. Peter Green was born on October 8, 1965, in Montclair, New Jersey. He began acting in his 20s and took classes at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute in Manhattan. According to Mr. Edwards, when Peter Green joined the Screen Actors Guild, he added a terminal E to his surname to distinguish himself from other performers with the same name. Mr. Green's first credited role was in an episode of the 1990 television drama Hardball, according to IMDb. His first major film role came 3 years later in Clean Shaven, a psychological drama directed by Lodge Kerrigan. Mr. Green played Peter Winter, a possible murderer who suffers from schizophrenia, and who, after being released from a mental institution, tries to get his daughter back from her adoptive family. Mr. Green was initially excited when he was asked to portray Zed in Pulp Fiction, he told the interviewer Sissy Gamache in 2016, but his enthusiasm waned after reading the script. "I didn't want to do that," he said, of portraying a rapist who chooses between assaulting Marcellus Wallace or the boxer Butch Coolidge, played by Bruce Willis. "The way it was written was just brutal," Mr. Green said. "That was a hard thing to do." In 1998, Mr. Green appeared with Ben Stiller and Elizabeth Hurley in Permanent Midnight, directed by David Veloz. Ms. Maslin wrote that Mr. Green's performance as a drug dealer was scarily authentic. Mr. Green starred in dozens of other films and television projects, including Blue Streak, 1999, 13 episodes of The Black Donnellys, 2007, and Training Day. Before his death, Mr. Green had been working on a project designed to raise awareness of the deaths that have resulted from the Trump administration's dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, according to Mr. Edwards. Working with Jason Alexander and Kathleen Turner, Mr. Green was co-producing and narrating a documentary, From the American People, The Withdrawal of U.S. Aid. That project is still in production, Mr. Edwards said. Mr. Green is survived by a brother, John Green, a sister, Marianne Green, and a son, Ryder. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is an article titled, Australian Leader Pledges Stricter Gun Laws After Deadly Bondi Shooting. The police said on Monday that they expected to bring criminal charges against the surviving suspect, who was in a coma after being shot by the police. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese vowed on Monday to toughen Australia's already strict gun laws after the country's worst mass shooting in 3 decades killed 15 people and wounded dozens more at a Jewish holiday celebration in Sydney. The government is prepared to take whatever action is necessary, he said at a news conference. Officials have said that the attack on Sunday at Bondi Beach was an act of terrorism carried out by a 24-year-old Australian citizen and his father, an immigrant living in the country illegally. The elder man, 50, who came to the country in 1998, had 6 firearms registered in his name. His country of origin was not immediately clear. Police officers responding to the massacre shot both suspects, killing the father and wounding the son, officials said. They have not publicly identified either man. The police said on Monday that they expected to bring criminal charges against the younger man. Australia had what advocates considered the gold standard on gun control. The country essentially banned assault rifles and many other semi-automatic weapons, as well as shotguns, after a gunman killed 35 people in the Tasmanian town of Port Arthur in 1996. After the attack at Bondi Beach, the country's leaders said they were prepared to enact additional restrictions. Potential measures could include a limit on the number of firearms a person can own and a ban on gun licenses for non-citizens of Australia. Mr. Albanese said the government should also periodically review gun licenses to ensure that those holding them had not been, quote, radicalized. Mr. Albanese said the younger suspect first came to the attention of the police in 2019 because of his connections to 2 other people whom the Prime Minister did not identify. The police also interviewed his father at the time, officials said, but Australia's intelligence service had determined there was no evidence that the men had been radicalized, Mr. Albanese said. The shooting suspects did not have any history of criminal offenses, the police said, and Mr. Albanese said there was no indication that the men had been part of a wider terrorist group. There is no evidence of collusion, no evidence that these people were part of a cell, Mr. Albanese told the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, adding that the younger man was in a coma after being shot by the police. After the elder man moved to Australia, he obtained a partner visa in 2001, and he had been living in the country on a resident visa, officials said. The shooting prompted an outpouring of grief for the victims who had been celebrating the first night of Hanukkah at a festival with music, food, and face painting. The dead included a retired police officer who loved rugby, a Holocaust survivor who was at the festival with his children and grandchildren, and a 10-year-old girl named Matilda. She was happy, always smiling, laughing, the girl's aunt, Lena Chernick, said in an interview on Monday. She asked that only the girl's first name be used to protect the family's privacy. She added that Matilda's younger sister, Summer, had witnessed the shooting and was traumatized. I just hope no other family has to go through this pain, Ms. Chernick said. Some members of Australia's Jewish community said the shooting was horrifying, but not entirely surprising. Anti-Semitism, they said, had been intensifying in Australia since the Hamas-led attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, and the devastating Israeli military campaign in Gaza that followed. Last year, a kosher restaurant in Sydney was the target of an arson attack, and masked men set fire to a synagogue in a suburb of Melbourne. Australian officials officials blamed Iran for the attacks and expelled the country's diplomats. Iran denied involvement. This year, a synagogue in Sydney was defaced with red swastikas, and a daycare center was torched and scrawled with anti-Semitic slurs. After the attack at Bondi Beach, some Australian Jews said the government had not done enough to respond to anti-Semitism. "We feel very let down by the Australian government," said Aaron Eisman, 37, who added that his neighbor was among those killed on Sunday. "We've been saying it's only a matter of time." Bondi Beach has been an anchor of Sydney's Jewish community since the first refugees arrived there after World War II, said Yvonne Haber, 62, who has lived in the area for over 3 decades. "This is our worst nightmare," she said. Gillian Siegel, who was appointed by Mr. Albanese as Australia's special envoy to fight anti-Semitism in response to the recent attacks, said in a statement that the shooting on Sunday was the culmination of a, quote, clear pattern. "What once seemed distant or uncomfortable can no longer be ignored," she said. Ms. Siegel urged Australia to act on a series of recommendations that she presented to the government in July. Some of her recommendations focused on countering the spread of anti-Semitic views, especially on social media, monitoring content published by the news media, and allowing the government to withhold funding from universities that, quote, facilitate, enable, or fail to act against anti-Semitism, unquote. At the time, Mr. Albanese said that the government would carefully consider the recommendations, but did not commit to carrying all of them out. Some people have pushed back on Ms. Siegel's ideas. The Australian Human Rights Institute accused her of biased arguments, weak evidence, and recommendation overreach. As the investigation into the attack on Sunday continued, the country rallied around a bystander who had been recorded on video tackling and disarming one of the gunmen as he fired at the Hanukkah festival. Australian officials identified the man as Ahmed El-Ahmed, a Syrian-born fruit vendor who was wounded in the attack. "He wasn't thinking about the background of the people he's saving, the people dying in the street," Mr. El-Ahmad's father, Mohammed Fatah El-Ahmad, told the national broadcaster ABC. "He doesn't discriminate between one nationality and another." Chris Minns, the Premier of the state of New South Wales, who visited Mr. El-Ahmad in the hospital, posted a photo on social media on Monday of the vendor sitting upright with bandages on his arm. Mr. Albanese said Mr. El-Ahmad had confronted one gunman but had been shot by the other, according to ABC. Mr. El-Ahmad's parents told ABC on Monday that he had been shot 4 to 5 times in his shoulder and was awaiting further surgery for his wounds. "Ahmed is a real-life hero," Mr. Minns wrote on social media, adding that the man's, quote, incredible bravery no doubt saved countless lives when he disarmed a terrorist at enormous personal risk. End of story. Born deaf and blind, she's caught in Trump's anti-diversity crusade. A program for deaf-blind children helped 3-year-old Annie Garner, born with poor vision and no ears, learn to communicate. The Trump administration cut the program's funding over diversity goals. Casey and Leah Garner wanted a big family. The Wisconsin couple had dreamed of having at least 6 children by the time they were in their 30s. But after years of struggling with infertility, they decided to adopt. At the hospital 3 years ago, meeting the newborn who would become their daughter, Mr. Garner was the first to notice the tiny flaps of skin where her ears should be. Annie, the child they were adopting, was deaf. Over the next few months, as they got to know their daughter, the Garners would discover more challenges, including poor vision, a developmental disability, and weak muscles. They were first-time parents, and they felt overwhelmed, thrown into an unfamiliar world they had not expected. "I was out there looking for anything and everything that could help us," said Mr. Garner, now 34. He discovered the Wisconsin Deaf-Blind Project, a state program for the families of children with combined vision and hearing loss. It made a tremendous difference as they learned to parent Annie, the Garners said. They met other families experiencing the same thing. A mentor taught them sign language. Annie got sensory toys and Braille books, and she even made a best friend with a similar condition. Then in September, the Trump administration canceled the 5-year, $918,000 grant for the program, which supports about 170 children in Wisconsin like Annie. It also ended a $10.5 million grant used to recruit and retain special education teachers in the state. The moves came at the same time that the administration cut similar programs for deafblind children across 7 other states, all of which leaned Democratic. In each case, the federal officials cited language in the program's grant applications related to goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity efforts have been a point of attack for President Trump, who has attempted to quash them in both the public and private sectors. One of the first executive orders he signed after taking office targeted DEI initiatives throughout the government, including federal grants used to advance DEI programs. His administration has said it would not cut special education funding, although civil rights investigations into disability education have been curtailed, and other programs would be moved to new agencies as part of Mr. Trump's wider goal to dismantle the education department. By targeting diversity language, however, the administration has been able to make cuts to programs that benefit children with disabilities without specifically rolling back special education. In addition to the deafblind initiatives, the Education Department said it had slashed money for more than 24 similar programs, including a school for the blind. Quote, many of these use overt race preferences or perpetuate divisive concepts and stereotypes, which no student should be exposed to, unquote, said Savannah Newhouse, an Education Department spokeswoman, in an emailed statement about the programs being cut. The Garners said they were shocked that the government would cut off assistance for raising a deaf-blind daughter. It seems like it should be a group of kids that everyone wants to help, said Mr. Garner, a civil engineer. Taking away help from deaf-blind kids? I don't understand. The Wisconsin Deafblind Project was penalized for prioritizing, quote, applicants from underrepresented and historically marginalized groups, unquote, according to a letter from the Trump administration, as well as its efforts to contract with women and minority business owners or disabled veterans. The deaf-blind programs in other states that lost funding had similar language or stated goals. Ms. Newhouse, the agency spokeswoman, said in her statement that the grant funds were being reinvested to, quote, better serve special needs students. Appeals by Wisconsin and other states to restore funding were quickly denied by Trump officials. An umbrella organization, the National Center on Deaf Blindness, said it could provide enough money from its own education department funding for the programs to continue, but only for another year. Some 10,000 children across the United States qualify as deaf-blind, a rare disability that occurs when someone has combined hearing and vision losses, often caused by complications at birth or genetic mutations. Most have additional disabilities. For this small number, these dollars meant the world, said Jolene Gruber, the grants coordinator for the Wisconsin program. Liam Anderson, 19, has been deafblind since he was 3, when he contracted meningitis and had a stroke. His mother, Jody Anderson, remembers her first call with employees from the program, describing it as, quote, one of the best phone calls ever. They understood the challenges Mr. Anderson would face, she recalled, and those early conversations helped her to realize that her son could still live a happy, fulfilling life. The program trained an interpreter in the school district to help Mr. Anderson communicate, a specialized role known as an intervener, and the intervener helped him learn to understand tactile sign language and read Braille. Now there are Braille books scattered around the Andersons' home. Mr. Anderson is currently making his way through the book of Leviticus from the Bible. In high school, with the intervener's help, he was able to join the marching band, playing percussion, and now takes drum lessons. The program was also a boon for Sid Miller, a 19-year-old in Belgium, Wisconsin, who has hearing and vision impairments. It helped him learn to ask for accommodations, like live captions in his high school classes and a sighted guide. Those tools are now helping him study graphic design at a technical college, and he's picked up contract work for the program, creating objects using 3D printing that help deaf-blind children. Before a recent adaptive sailing trip, he made them a model of a boat so they could visualize the vessel before taking part. He worries that the younger students won't get the same opportunities that he did if the program's funding is cut. It's kind of cruel, he said. For Annie Garner, the program has provided something her parents feared she might not find because of her communication issues and other disabilities: a best friend. The Garners met another family through the program with a deaf-blind daughter, Emma, who was born just 9 days apart from Annie. At their first meeting, the two sat together for hours and now have regular play dates. On a recent afternoon, Annie's parents set up her feeding tube as she sat on the floor of her home in Reedsburg, a small town in a rural part of the state about an hour's drive northwest of Madison. A colorful headband held her hearing aid in place as Annie fiddled around with the electronic tablet that helps her to communicate, something she was taught to use by employees of the deaf-blind program. She tapped several letters and symbols until her message played, "I am a beautiful person who is the best." You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is from the B section of the paper. It's called "Elon Musk Taunts Europe and Tests Willingness to Enforce Online Laws." Backed by White House officials, the tech billionaire has lashed out at the European Union after his social media platform X was fined last week. Elon Musk is daring European authorities to take him on. The billionaire lashed out at the European Union over the past week after regulators fined X, the social media platform he owns, roughly $140 million for violating digital transparency rules. In response, Mr. Musk called for the abolishment of the 27-nation bloc, compared it to Nazi Germany, and cast efforts to regulate X as a personal attack. X also barred the European Commission, which issued the fine last week, from advertising on the platform for policy violations. The EU should be abolished and sovereignty returned to individual countries so that governments can better represent their people, Mr. Musk wrote on X. Mr. Musk has grown increasingly confrontational toward Europe over the past year, but his fresh antagonism comes at a delicate time after regulators said that X broke the law by selling verification check marks that allow users to mislead others about their identities, maintaining opaque advertising practices, and refusing to provide researchers with data access. Another investigation of X's approach to content moderation is underway in Brussels, which could lead to additional fines and orders to change company policies. Authorities in Ireland and France are also investigating the platform. With his taunts, Mr. Musk, who was a close advisor to President Trump early this year, is testing regulators' resolve to enforce laws designed to improve transparency and prevent the spread of illicit content. Researchers said such material has proliferated on X since Mr. Musk acquired it in 2022. The intention is clearly to intimidate regulators, said Martin Husavec, an associate professor of law at London School of Economics and Political Science, who is an expert on internet regulation. If you link yourself up with the President of the United States, then you can intimidate European regulators from doing their job. Mr. Musk can appeal the EU ruling. In the meantime, if he does not pay the fine and comply, authorities can add further penalties. An EU spokesman said a ban of X was not under consideration. Mr. Musk and X did not respond to requests for comment. The standoff illustrates a free speech divide between the United States and Europe. In the United States, free speech protections allow companies like X to set their own content policies. Mr. Trump and others on the right have successfully pushed social media firms to roll back moderation rules they viewed as silencing conservative voices. But in Britain and the European Union, laws adopted since 2022 require X and other platforms to remove certain racist, anti-Semitic, and violent content once it is flagged by users. The split leaves European authorities wrestling with how aggressively they should enforce their laws, especially against a company with powerful allies in the White House. Europe has to be careful, Mr. Trump said on Monday, discussing the fine against X. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio also criticized the EU decision. Henna Virkunen, The European Commissioner who issued the fine against X declined to comment. A spokesman said the Commission would keep enforcing its rules, quote, because it is our sovereign legislation, here to protect citizens in the European Union from online risks, unquote. Mr. Musk appears to be capitalizing on Europe's bruised relationship with the United States, including over the war in Ukraine. A national security strategy released by the White House last week said that Europe risked, quote, civilizational erasure, unquote, end quote, for policies seen as undermining liberty, sovereignty, and free speech. At the same time, Mr. Musk is playing an increasingly visible role in European politics, including backing calls for mass deportations of immigrants. In Britain, Mr. Musk has been a vocal critic of Prime Minister Keir Starmer and has backed the populist Reform UK Party, created by Nigel Farage, who led the Brexit campaign. In Germany, Mr. Musk has supported the far-right Alternative for Germany Party. Mr. Musk's company SpaceX also provides key satellite communication technology to soldiers in Ukraine. Sundar Katwala, the founder of British Future, a London-based think tank, said Mr. Musk's stature has made regulators reluctant to act. He said X is likely in breach of the Online Safety Act, a 2023 law that requires companies to take robust action against illegal content, which can include attacks based on a person's race, sexuality, or religion. Mr. Katwala said that he reported at least 100 examples to X of people being targeted with a vulgar racial slur used against Pakistani people in Britain. In more than 90% of the cases, X's complaint system ignored or rejected the complaint, he said. In November, Mr. Katwala submitted his findings to Ofcom, the British regulator charged with enforcing the Online Safety Act. This month, the agency said it was investigating whether unnamed social media platforms were doing enough to identify and remove hate and terror-related content. There is a confrontation coming at some point, Mr. Katwala said. Ofcom did not respond to a request for comment. Josephine Ballin, the managing director of Hate Aid, a group in Germany tracking online hate, said all social media platforms have problems, but Mr. Musk is the most openly hostile. X stopped cooperating with German law enforcement agencies investigating illegal hate speeches, including court orders, she said. Quote, it's like they are not even willing to pretend that they are going to comply with the law anymore, unquote, Ms. Ballin said. In the opinion section of the newspaper, this is a guest essay titled Trump Confronts a Backlash of the Reasonable. It's written by E.J. Dion, Jr. Ms. Dion is a contributing opinion writer. Believing in democracy does not require faith that majorities are always right. It does mean having confidence that most of your fellow citizens will, over time, approach public questions with a basic reasonableness. Abraham Lincoln, tradition has it, said it more pithily. You cannot fool all the people all the time. A corollary to Lincoln, that you can't fool all the people who voted for you all the time, explains the sharp decline in President Trump's approval ratings. A significant share of the voters who backed Mr. Trump have decided that he has largely ignored the primary issue that pushed them his way, the cost of living. A billionaire regularly mocking concern about affordability only makes matters worse. They see him as distracted by personal obsessions and guilty of overreach, even when they sympathize with his objectives. Many of his former supporters see him breaking promises he made, notably on not messing with their access to health care. Some abuses are too blatant to be ignored. A recent The Economist/YouGov poll found that 56% of Americans said Mr. Trump was using his office for personal gain. Only 32% didn't. A similar 56% saw Mr. Trump as directing the Justice Department to go after people he saw as his political enemies. Just 24% didn't. The upshot? A great many Americans who helped put Mr. Trump in office have absorbed what's happened since. They may not be glued to every chaotic twist of this presidency, but they do pay attention and have concluded, reasonably, that this is not what they voted for. How many? Let's take Mr. Trump's 49.8% of the 2024 popular vote as a baseline and compare it with his approval ratings. A New York Times analysis of public polling this month found his net approval rating had dropped to 42%. An AP NORC poll and a Gallup poll pegged it at 36%. This suggests that 15 to 25% of his voters have changed their minds. I think of these shifts as the triumph of reasonableness, and not because I agree with where these fellow citizens have landed, although I do. I'm buoyed by the capacity of citizens to absorb new facts and take in information even when it challenges decisions they previously made. It turns out that swing voters are what their label implies. The evidence of their own lives and from their own eyes matters. All this is obviously good news for Democrats, who extended their 2025 hot streak by winning the mayoralty in Miami on Tuesday. But it's more than that. It dispels myths about Mr. Trump's having magical powers to distract and deceive. It shows that for all the legitimate concerns about the breakdown of our media and information systems, reality can still get through. The decay of Mr. Trump's standing is a rebuke to widespread claims a year ago that his victory represented a fundamental realignment in American politics, akin to those led by Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1930s or Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. Never mind that Mr. Trump's 49.8% of the popular vote fell far short of Roosevelt's 60.8% in 1936 and Reagan's 58.8% in 1984. Never mind that Mr. Trump defeated former Vice President Kamala Harris by just 1.5 percentage points nationwide. The case for a Trump realignment was built in large part on Republican wish-casting and Democratic despondency, married to a few facts, including substantial Trump gains among Latinos and young men. True, the Republicans secured majorities in the Senate and the House, but the GOP won 2 fewer seats in the House in 2024 than it did 2 years earlier, far from the sweeping gains typically yielded by realigning elections. One of the most emotive factual artifacts of the election was an excellent New York Times county-by-county map that portrayed a sea of red arrows across the nation, reflecting the increase in Mr. Trump's share of the vote from 4 years earlier in nearly 90% of the nation's 3,144 counties. Some of his largest gains were in solidly blue states, such as New York, New Jersey, California, and Massachusetts. But a nationwide trend in a single election is not the same as a realignment, and the president's mercurial extremism squandered whatever opportunity the GOP might have had to expand its map. My hunch is that Republicans will regret what they allowed him to throw away. The Times again produced those fine county maps for the 2025 governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia, and the recent special House election in Tennessee. But this time, nearly all the arrows were blue, pointing toward the Democrats, and GOP gains among Latinos and young men were largely wiped out. Genuine realignments don't collapse so quickly. Another response to 2024 was a backlash against Trump voters. Mr. Trump does better with voters who lack college degrees, and he once declared, "I love the poorly educated." Some who were aghast at his victory blamed the outcome on the irrationality of low-income, low-information voters. But to view some large share of the electorate as irrational is wrong, and ought to be anathema to anyone who claims to hold a democratic worldview. Far more persuasive is the analysis that the political scientist Samuel L. Popkin offered in his 1991 book, The Reasoning Voter. He provided a wealth of data to show, as his title implies, that voters actually do reason about parties, candidates, and issues. They draw on information shortcuts to think about who and what political parties stand for and what government can and should do. They engage in, quote, low information rationality, unquote. That so many swing voters use the Trump vote to express their dissatisfaction with the 2024 status quo has certainly had calamitous consequences. What should hearten friends of democracy is how many voters have weighed what Mr. Trump has done and found him acting, well, unreasonably. Especially striking are the findings of a Public Religion Research Institute poll this fall that asked whether Mr. Trump had gone, quote, too far, unquote, in a variety of his actions. Among respondents, 54% said he had gone too far on tariffs, as did 55% on cuts to grants to universities and 60% on cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act. Mr. Trump and the GOP are especially vulnerable on cuts to enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies. A KFF survey last month found that 74% of Americans said they should be extended, not eliminated. Even on immigration, Mr. Trump's signature issue, his radical approach was unpopular. In the Public Religion Research Institute poll, 65% of respondents opposed deporting undocumented immigrants to foreign prisons. 63% opposed arresting undocumented immigrants who have resided in the United States with no criminal records. And 58% said that immigration and customs enforcement officers should not conceal their identities with masks or use unmarked vehicles. Mr. Trump's opponents have no cause for complacency. In the wake of the 2008 financial implosion, the pandemic and post-pandemic inflation, volatility and unhappiness have been hallmarks of public opinion. Poll numbers are fickle. But in 2025, Trumpian flim-flam hit its limits, even in the GOP, when a majority of Republicans in the Indiana State Senate defied the president's demands for a midterm congressional redistricting. His power to intimidate is ebbing. A reasonable majority exists. It is searching for alternatives to a leader and a movement it has found wanting. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From the arts section, here's a story titled, As Regional Theaters Struggle, Some Defy the Odds. Naples, Florida, and Milwaukee are quite different, but have one thing in common. They are home to regional theaters that are thriving. America's regional theaters are facing difficult times, staging fewer shows, employing fewer workers, and running deficits more frequently than before the pandemic. But not all of them are struggling. Some are booming. In Wisconsin, Milwaukee Repertory Theater has finished the first phase of an $80 million renovation of its three-theater complex in an old power plant along the Milwaukee River. In Naples, Florida, Gulf Shore Playhouse has just begun its second season in a new $80 million complex with a curved facade meant to evoke the nearby sand and sea. Both theaters are now breaking their own records. Milwaukee Rep's staging of Come From Away, the first show on the theater's renovated main stage, has just ended its run as the highest grossing production in the company's 71-year history. And Gulf Shore Playhouse's current production, Irving Berlin's White Christmas, is breaking every record for that company, with a nightly waiting list for people seeking seats. Kristen Corey, the Playhouse's chief executive and producing artistic director, described her programming mantra as up and known. Translation, when deciding which shows to produce, she selects ones that are upbeat and well-known. We're at a moment now where there's a lot of poke-you-in-the-eye theater, like, I don't care what you think, this is good for you, and I'm not going to make you feel like a terrible person, and you better buy a ticket anyway. My first covenant is with the audience, and I care about what they think, she added. People don't want to spend money on a show they don't think they're going to like. The Milwaukee Theater's leaders, though making different choices in all sorts of ways, make a similar point. We actually like our people, said Mark Clements, the artistic director in Milwaukee. We're not trying to be didactic and lecture people. For a struggling industry, these two theaters, and a handful of others, are models of success. They are producing a healthy menu of shows, drawing large audiences, running budget surpluses, and raising money for capital projects. But they are definitely in the minority. American theaters, after some initial signs of recovery post-pandemic, have more recently taken a second dip, according to Jen Benoit Bryan, the executive director of SMU Data Arts, a national arts and culture research center at Southern Methodist University. The numbers are grim. From 2023 to 2024, theater attendance fell 19%, and income fell 37%, according to SMU Data Arts. Everybody is hurting, but theaters are hurting at a different scale than other arts organizations, she said. Figuring out what thriving theaters have in common is complicated. They vary in location, size, and degree of influence, and include companies like Pasadena Playhouse in California and the Guthrie Theater in Minnesota. A number of them, but not all, seem to share a few distinctive attributes. Communities with less competitive cultural landscapes, where the theaters have high visibility and civic standing, programming philosophies that prioritize what audiences might want to see over what artists believe audiences would benefit from seeing, and the lingering benefits of having minimized the duration of their COVID shutdowns, which helped audiences maintain the theater-going habit. At the start of the pandemic, Gulf Shore laid off 3/4 of its staff, opting to safeguard its resources for reopening. While we were doing that, other theaters were spending a truckload of money keeping people employed for a year who were doing nothing but sewing masks, Corey said. Milwaukee Rep, on the other hand, retained 95% of its staff, believing it would allow them to restart more quickly. The theater was worried about a talent drain, which many of its peer institutions experienced during the pandemic. It also arrived at the pandemic with sizable cash reserves, giving it options. We took a very different path than the rest of the field, said Chad Bauman, the theater's executive director. We were doing performances when almost nobody else in the entire country was doing them. Milwaukee Rep, founded in 1954, is one of the nation's oldest professional regional theaters. Gulf Shore Playhouse, founded in 2004, is one of the newest. It was just admitted to the League of Resident Theaters, a national association of 81 leading regional theaters, in 2022. Both theaters have big dreams. They hope to attract pre-Broadway productions, which bring revenue and attention to regional theaters, but are hard to book, because expectations of audience, staff, and facilities are high. The two communities are quite different. Milwaukee is a sizable, historically blue-collar, overwhelmingly Democratic city, while Naples is small, packed with affluent retirees, and heavily Republican. A commonality: the two areas have a lot of captains of industry. We have the highest per capita amount of former CEOs, Corey said of Naples. She added that 90% of her fundraising is from individuals rather than corporations or foundations, and the biggest donors are Jay and Patty Baker, who gave $20 million. He is the former president of Kohl's. Milwaukee still has a robust corporate community, and the Rep has done better than many of its peers at attracting corporate contributions. The biggest donor to its renovation project is the largest Wisconsin-based bank, Associated Bank, which gave $10 million, and for which the theater center is now named. By coincidence, the Bakers previously lived in Milwaukee and supported Milwaukee Rep. Both theaters' capital projects faced significant damage from big storms. In Naples, Hurricane Ian knocked down several walls of the new Gulf Shore Playhouse while it was under construction in 2022. In Milwaukee, intense flooding in August caused $7 million in damage to a production facility where the theater had been storing sets and costumes, including for its mainstay production of A Christmas Carol, while building its new home. Gulf Shore, which produces 7 shows a season, has been growing fast. Since the pandemic, its annual budget has risen to $14.5 million from $3.6 million, and it now has 83 full-time employees. Its new main stage theater is nearly twice the size of the one in its former home, 368 seats now, compared to 200. The theater opened its first season in its new home with Anything Goes and closed with Sweet Charity. It's debatable if Sweet Charity is actually upbeat because it ends unhappily for the protagonist, but both shows are indisputably classics, with songs that have become standards and big dance numbers. In between, Corey programmed 2 crowd-pleasing plays, the suspense drama Dial M for Murder and the farce Noises Off. At the same time, in the new building's 125-seat Black Box Theater, Gulf Shore staged 3 plays with sobering themes, but a track record of success. Every Brilliant Thing, which deals with depression and suicide, and will have a Broadway production this season. The Lehman Trilogy, about the rise and fall of a financial empire. And Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, about Billie Holiday as she is grappling with addiction. My first question is always, is it good, Corey said. Not, do you feel like it will teach a good lesson? And not, which agenda is attached to it. Just, is it a good play? Milwaukee Rep, with a $17 million annual budget and 125 employees, is a larger and more established company. It is producing 12 shows this season, including the Lehman Trilogy and The Piano Lesson, a Pulitzer Prize winner from August Wilson, as well as 2 Agatha Christie-related shows, and expects to do 13 next year. It also does lots of new work, and unlike many of its peers, has a 14,000-person subscriber base that has remained remarkably loyal. Obviously, theaters are struggling, and Milwaukee has bucked that trend, said Ayad Akhtar, a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright for Disgraced, who grew up in a Milwaukee suburb and serves on the Rep's board. There's multi-generational industrial family support and programming and artistic experience that is worthy of being thought about, and at the same time can sell a lot of tickets. Akhtar's McNeil, a play about artificial intelligence that debuted on Broadway last season, will open the Rep's Black Box Theater with up to 220 seats early next year. The redone theater complex features some distinctive amenities. The main stage, with up to 670 seats, has different tiers and the nicest seats. Proving quite popular are leather with cup holders and premium pricing. And the theater's leadership can wine and dine donors in a backstage VIP suite with a window overlooking pre-show warm-ups. The theater's leadership is proud of its status as an outlier, noting that not only is it defying downward trends on attendance and giving, but that it is also thriving in a state that has among the lowest levels of public arts funding in the nation. The theater puts its 3 goals to entertain, provoke, and inspire on banners. Where some have gotten into trouble is that they've over-rotated in one of these directions, said Bauman, the executive director. The secret sauce to programming is that if you're an audience member, we have a really great, really diverse mix of programming, and we never over-rotate in any one of these sides. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the December 16, 2025 issue of the New York Times. Your reader has been Jim Michaely. Thank you for listening.